Annihilation is a 2018 sci-fi based on the novel by Jeff Vandermeer. It stars Natalie Portman and is written and directed by Alex Garland, writer and director of Ex Machina, and writer of Danny Boyle's The Beach, also the novel, 28 Days Later, and Sunshine. It follows Lena Portman, a biologist who is mourning the absence of her husband Kane, played by Oscar Isaac, a soldier who had been declared MIA. Kane's sudden return and sickness seem linked to the appearance of a strange, expanding, higher dimension, bordered by a shimmering light. Annihilation's opening scenes are cold, as is its protagonist. The dialogue is a little clinical and feels too smart and too cool. Ex Machina had serious intellectual sci-fi ideas at its core, but first it hooked us in with Donald Gleason's likeable, relatable lead. There's no such sympathy for the characters here, at least not early on. The film warms up, however, as we get to flashbacks showing us the charm and energy that once was Lena and Kane's relationship. We need these flashbacks to contextualise their current malaise and to explain her depressive demeanour. Annihilation really hits its stride when it delves into harder sci-fi ideas and imagery as Lena is recruited by Dr. Ventress, the always great Jennifer Jason Leigh, to investigate this mysterious growing mist they call the Shimmer. Annihilation seems to borrow heavily from the Russian sci-fis of Andrei Tarkovsky. The idea of a zone in which memory and emotion can somehow affect reality and vice versa is very reminiscent of Stalker. The Shimmer is an interesting monster in that it seems not to have its own agenda, but rather reflects back and manifests biologically the aggressive or self-destructive tendencies of those who enter it. The juxtaposition of nature and artifice, for example the plants that are both natural but fake-seeming, and some of the slow panning shots of familiar objects made to look alien submerged in water, are very similar to images in both of Tarkovsky's Stalker and Solaris. The depiction of the Shimmer itself, a shaky, colourful array of light, also reminds of the shots of the alien planet in Solaris. In that film, proximity to the planet triggered memories of our protagonist's deceased wife, and the planet itself simulated a desired or lost reality. In Annihilation, Lena's partner, believed to be dead, reappears at the same time as, or perhaps from, the Shimmer. In each of these three films, Solaris, Stalker, and Annihilation, the new alien space is associated somehow with dreams, desires, and with absent or dead lovers. Like the plants in the Shimmer, there is a horror in the merging of the familiar and the alien. This touches on Freud's idea of the uncanny, a notion in psychology that something familiar, out of context or altered, can be more disturbing than something simply alien. Freud suggested this is because it reminds us of something unconscious or repressed. Lacan wrote that the uncanny confuses our moral compass, blurring the lines between familiar and strange, good and bad. These two ideas also connect to one more fancy film theory idea that I think is relevant to Annihilation, and that is Julia Kristeva's concept of abjection. This is the idea of something that disturbs concepts of identity and classification. Kristeva describes the horror of abjection as that feeling one experiences when confronted by a breakdown of the division between the self and other. For the biologist Lena, the Shimmer represents a zone of abjection, where the self and the environment become complicated, and the rules she held prior about species, classification and so on, and about the stability and distinction of her own identity are all challenged. Some of the resultant images and ideas are also reminiscent of Cronenberg's films, particularly the notion that the monster here is not a new alien thing so much as a familiar thing somehow altered or merged with other familiar things. Annihilation also reminds a little bit of Ridley Scott's Alien in some of its later imagery, and Scott's Blade Runner in some of its later ideas, though questions of identity are even more ambiguous even than in Blade Runner. As in Tarkovsky's sci-fis, water imagery is important for its status as both natural and distorting. Objects and plants are viewed through its distorting, refracting lens, and in a key early scene, Kane and Lena's hands touching are distorted by a glass of water. A central theme here is the way loss or psychological events can trigger actual change to one's identity and even to biology. Shepard notes that since her daughter died, she mourns two losses: her child and the person she once was. Kane seems to have returned from the Shimmer, a place where memory and psychology are apparently affected, a different man. After getting through the cold, slow opening, Annihilation steadily grew on me thanks to the pretty visuals, sharp performances, and some of these really interesting sci-fi ideas. Solaris, Stalker, and Ex Machina are all perhaps slightly better films, but this is still a really good sci-fi, and it makes me want to wait keenly for Alex Garland's next work. 4 out of 5.